Ladies and gentlemen, Jussie Smollett has been found guilty of 5 out of 6 felony counts pertaining to lying to police. So, according to the New York Post and every other publication out there, Jussie Smollett was convicted Thursday of staging a crime nearly 3 years after he claimed 2 Trump supporters, and then, we can go into it. The whole thing is so absurd. You can add Jussie Smollett to the long list of morally superior liberal Democrats, from Alec Baldwin to Hunter Biden to Jeffrey Toobin, to Eric Schneiderman, who was left office Attorney General in New York in disgrace, to Andrew Cuomo, who has a criminal charge of his own, I believe, put infected people in nursing homes and elderly care facilities, got an Emmy from Hollywood. Let's see, Chris Cuomo, who helped silence his brother's accusers, fired from CNN. Don Lemon, who, by the way, has his own allegation and lawsuit pertaining to the typical wonderful, morally superior liberal Democratic male activity of doing something disgusting and then obviously getting into a lawsuit for it. Michael Avenatti, who is in prison for extorting Nike. Am I missing anybody? I mean, the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, former Governor of Virginia. That's 10 people right there. Bill Clinton, we could add. A Hollywood producer is now, or director, producer, who's now serving a 23-year sentence, who is in pictures with Madam Secretary and basically everyone in Hollywood, all good liberal Hollywood Democrats. We can go on forever. These are the people telling you that Trump is the most bigoted, horrible man, and these people are accused credibly. Let's just add that subjective term, because the way wonderful, morally superior liberal Democrats work is they say, well, when Biden is accused, when mashed potato brains is accused, well, it's not credible. But when Kavanaugh or Trump is accused, oh, that's credible. So these people play these vapid semantic word games just to make themselves feel good at the expense of morality. Now, I'm going to give you the absolute most important statistic or numbers you should know when talking about the Jussie Smollett verdict. Okay? The most important numbers or data or information you should know is the non-white vote from 2016 to 2020. Okay? And we're going to get to Jussie Smollett in a second. You know he's guilty. We'll see what happens in terms of either prison time or, him escaping prison time. But in 2016, Donald Trump against Clinton got 8% of the African American vote, 28% of the Hispanic American vote, and 27% of the Asian American vote. In 2020, he did better in every group, every non-white group, including the ones I mentioned. So in 2020, he went from those numbers to 12% of the African American vote, 32% of the Hispanic vote, 34% of the Asian American vote. So Latino and Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, African Americans, all voted for President Trump by a much wider margin, and that is with over 90% negative media coverage. The problem with morally superior liberal Democrats is that they are ignorant of just not only the numbers, not only the fact that their media onslaught for 4 straight years, Trump was a Putin puppet. Well, now we have Russia about to invade Ukraine under Biden's watch. They didn't do it under Trump's watch. They did it under Biden's watch. Okay? And we can go on forever. I mean, President Trump was a great president in terms of accomplishments. Okay? The media, in terms of we had record low unemployment, and if they want to blame him for his response to you-know-what, well, they gave Andrew Cuomo an Emmy. And he was putting infected people in elderly care facilities, as was Whitmer and Newsom and Phil Murphy, who could even be worse than Andrew Cuomo. So you can't separate Trump's response from the absolutely horrendous response of governors, Democratic governors in Democratic states, and New York and New Jersey are still above Texas and Florida and most red states in terms of per capita rates, okay, case fatality rates. But here, far above. But here, if you just look, we'll get back to Jussie Smollett in a second, but I want to explain the mentality that fostered the Jussie Smollett hoax, where he set up a crime, paid people to fake beat him up. This is an article in New York Magazine. This article in New York Magazine is written by a wonderful journalist who, unfortunately, has the same viewpoint as many friends that you had or I had who disowned us because we dared to either vote for Bernie Sanders or not vote at all, or vote for President Trump, or vote Green Party, or vote or do anything other than vote straight Democrat. So I went from the left. I was the biggest Bernie Sanders booster on the internet, according to the Huffington Post, the unofficial scribe of Sanders' most hardcore voters, according to the Washington Post. I supported President Trump because I went from there to supporting President Trump because he was a great president. Record low Black and Latino unemployment, and we saw that he got a greater percentage of the non-white vote than he did in 2016. All the fake crime set up, or the fake crime that was set up by Jussie Smollett that he might go to prison for, or that he was found guilty for in terms of felonies, the media onslaught did not affect the votes. He did better among the non-white vote, and by one estimate, Newsweek says he had the best numbers of any Republican among non-white voters in 60 years. But here, just really quickly, the Jussie Smollett hoax, or, it's the same thing with Trump-Russia. He never worked with Russia. It was a Steele dossier that literally was just a bunch of lies that they purchased. They actually have to fabricate things just to make themselves feel good and think that they're morally superior to Trump. Trump has a much better track record on every issue than Andrew Cuomo, or Whitmer, or Murphy, or just pick, or Biden. Look at the economy under Trump before before Democrats and governors gleefully tanked their economy, just to keep everyone safe. But really quickly, there's a New York Magazine article that'll give you the mentality that fostered, the mentality that helped fuel the machinations within the brain of Jussie Smollett. Here we have an article in New York Magazine by a great journalist here. Some feel with few exceptions, loving a Republican means loving someone who voted for Trump twice, despite and they will just use the word bigotry and his denial of the health crisis, okay, and credible allegations. Number one, he didn't deny anything. If anybody was denying something, it was Andrew Cuomo, who said there's no reason for undue anxiety in the beginning of March. New York then became the epicenter on the planet, and it is still up towards the highest, I think it was like maybe fifth in terms of per capita rates, according to the New York Times. Okay, New Jersey is still up there, above New York. And you see a resurgence in in the places that have the most draconian policies. So you had, all throughout last year, Democratic-run states, 6 to 7 of the top 10 highest case fatality rates of any states in the country. Then slowly you had red states move up, but you still had more people who lost their lives under Biden than Trump. So explain that. But see, again, media doesn't blame Biden. They don't say that Biden single-handedly, made those people sick like they do with Trump. Okay? The double standard in terms of basic logic, or this irrational double standard, is unbelievable. But just want to read you this New York Magazine article really quickly. With few exceptions, loving a Republican means loving someone who voted for Trump twice. Loving a Democrat apparently also means somebody who voted for Clinton or Biden, both of whom pushed or voted for the crime bill. Biden wrote the part of the crime bill in 94 that caused all the systemic problems that apparently morally superior liberal Democrats want to alleviate now. They caused the problems, then they get on their soapbox and preach and pontificate and give these sermons. So so the 100-to-1 sentencing disparity was literally written for the same narcotic, just in a different form, was written by Joe Biden. Joe Biden also presided over the destruction. He helped destroy and obliterate a country in Libya, along with President Obama and Clinton. Okay, they toppled a tyrant, and then there was a power vacuum, and now human beings are being bought and sold. But apparently the journalist here is okay with voting for people like Clinton and Biden who do that. Trump didn't do that. Trump didn't destroy or help destabilize an African country. No, that was Biden and Clinton. So if you vote for that, that means you're okay with that. Is that the mentality? And so even befriending a Republican involves a certain amount of tolerance, and tolerance is not always a virtue, as conservatives themselves have argued for decades. Conservatives never argue that tolerance isn't a virtue, and Democrats show no tolerance at all. Just ask Alec Baldwin, all the things he said about conservatives or Republicans, and now look where he's at. Every conservative on the planet, or liberal Democrat who became a supporter of President Trump, like myself, or a person who owns firearms, like myself, like you, are schooling Mr. Baldwin on how a Colt 45 works. You cannot fire it without pulling the trigger of the firearm on a Colt 45. It's a single-action revolver. You have to pull the hammer all the way back, and even it will not go off if you pull the hammer all the way back, unless it's modified, in which case the producers would have had to purchase a modified Colt 45, and he would have known that either way, he's guilty of sin, of negligence at least. It was a horrible accident. We'll just say now an accident. But you see the Alec Baldwin, Jussie Smollett, liberal journalist mentality. Oh, the tolerance it takes. The tolerance it takes to befriend a Republican, a conservative, a person who voted for Trump twice? Well, let's see. You voted for Biden, who was accused credibly, even though all of media tried to silence his accuser, Tara Reid. The double standard is unbelievable. Okay, look at the poverty rates. When the ladies at The View, for example, talk about systemic inequality, the inequality is the worst in blue states. The greatest disparity between the ultra-wealthy and the poorest of the poor are in New York and Los Angeles, run by liberal Democrats. But again, the Jussie Smollett thing is more than just a man who shamelessly and in the most immoral manner tried to paint half the country as vile bigots just to further his own career and to take advantage of the zeitgeist. He didn't care if there was a young child or a teenager or a person online that would have been disparaged had his hoax worked. He didn't care about all the negative, fighting or disputes or arguments or debates online or in person, trying to paint one political side as, oh, you see what happened to Jussie Smollett, the famous actor? That's because all 73 million Americans are just like that. Yeah, but the difference is that, number one, it was a hoax. Number two, the Trump-Russia nonsense was also a fabricated myth and fantasy. They had to purchase it. So what's the difference between the Steele dossier and Jussie Smollett's trial? They're the same things. They're liberal Democrats trying to find something on Trump because they don't like his personality, ignoring the fact that President Obama and Clinton and Biden, mashed potato brains Biden, presided over the destruction of an African country in Libya, wrote the crime bill. What else? And we can go through taking money from Uranium One, hundreds of billions of dollars, or hundreds of millions, let's say, from foreign interests or interests around the world where quid pro quo, a favorable interaction took place for those who gave money into a foundation. They're completely, and then they go after Trump for allegedly doing the same thing, but they can't find anything in his tax returns. And when it's them, it's, well, correlation is not causation. When it's Trump, if something happens and the outer reaches of the universe, oh my God, it has to be Trump's fault. Now you have the Putin and the Kremlin about to invade Ukraine, and what's Biden? What are Democrats, the Cold Warriors, going to do? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. They want to battle climate change. Fossil fuels are at an all-time high. And so I started off with, and I'll give you the Roper Center election information on how groups voted. Okay, the demographic other voted more as well for Donald Trump last year as opposed to 2016. So you look, ladies and gentlemen, and you see that the numbers themselves, he even did better among people making less. Let's see, did he do better among people making less than $50,000? Trump? Yeah, he did. People, working class people making less than $50,000, 44% voted for Trump in 2020 as opposed to 2016, where 41%. So you're looking at the myth, the fantasies that Democrats create in their minds, that they're morally superior. The opposite is true. Literally everything they pontificate and preach about goes down the toilet. Medicare for all. Nobody's talking about the free college tuition. Mashed potato brains Biden ignored that or lied about that. I come from the left, so I understand the grift. But see, the leftists, they understand the grift, but they can't get out of it because they'll lose their friends too. I always thought that friendship far outweighed politics. I learned the hard way. Now I know that there are some people so brainwashed by CNN and MSNBC and by Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo and morally superior liberal journalists at the New York Times, the Washington Post, who help disseminate lies and nonsense from corrupt intelligence officials like the Steele dossier. I mean, it's right in front of you. But you can't be an ignorant, gullible fool, which is a problem with a good part of our population. When they see something in the New York Times or the Washington Post, or they say, well, the intelligence services say, well, the intelligence services said the Gulf of Tonkin happened, WMD. They didn't even know. They never predicted that Russia would be invading Ukraine now. But what I'm trying to tell you is, you think in life, you think that a 30-year friendship, a 20-year friendship would build enough bond or memories or love or emotion where politics wouldn't tarnish those years of memories. But for the weak-willed among us, for the people who look and say, oh my God, I'm so morally superior. Oh my God, Trump is a menace to democracy. How could you vote for this person? These people don't understand that there are good and bad policies. Democrats have good and bad policies. Republicans have good and bad policies. If you want to pick a certain side, fine, go ahead. But just because you've picked a certain side doesn't mean your side is morally superior when it comes to politics. Especially if you're ignorant as to all the immoral, criminal things that your side has done, which is what most morally superior Democrats are, completely ignorant when it comes to that. But see, you would think that politics is not nearly as important as friendship. But family bonds and friendship to morally superior Democrats are easily severed by the belief that they must be morally superior because they're not capable, they're incapable of actually looking at their own side and saying, oh, Hunter Biden engaged in quid pro quo. Oh, Madam Secretary voted for the Iraq War, Afghanistan, so did Biden, pushed the crime bill, did a whole bunch of bigoted things over the years, so I don't have a right to judge. But see, their lives revolve now around condemnation and judgment. The smartest people I know in life are actually agnostic, many of whom are atheists. But I will say this. The people who are the most fervent, ideologues when it comes to being morally superior liberal Democrats, they're generally atheists or have no real belief in a God. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is a bad thing when you replace religion with politics. And Jussie Smollett and others tried to or helped create this world where religion and political tribalism, allegiance, replaced a belief in God or religion. When politics becomes a religion, then you have these morally superior buffoons and imbeciles disowning friends or family just because of a political side. That's not a reason to do that, especially when your side is actually far more immoral than the side you're trying to pretend you're better than. But what he did is profound in its sinister nature. The country apparently was in such a good place he had to fabricate a hoax. And he tried to get away with it, and had he gotten away with it, he would have taken every award and all the money and just, been so happy, but it didn't work. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now to this channel. Subscribe to the Stock Market Crash channel. And read my article in The Federalist on the upcoming stock market crash. If you want to support my work, my Patreon is below. Thank you so very, very much.